pain, evil, and suffering can actually be of value to us, and they can teach us things. And they started with think about someone who has a long chronic illness on their deathbed, and it may give them time where they can reconcile with family or confess wrongs that they've done, or maybe tell people things that they needed to tell them. And I don't wish chronic pain on anyone. And that's a hard thing to wrap my head around, right? Now, pain itself, physical pain, I wouldn't call that evil. In fact, it's really for our protection, right? If you touch something hot, you immediately pull away. If you break or injure a limb, your whole body protects it, right? You're just hypersensitive to the injured member until it is whole again. And it brings a hyper focus of protection and care for the weakened member. Chronic pain, however, that's hard to wrap our heads around, right? Because it's like, yeah, I know I'm broken. I know I'm injured. Please make the pain stop. Please make the pain stop. And so that's hard to wrap around, like people that get no relief, and it's not serving a preserving function anymore. Now it's just like a living agony they're having to endure. But even through that pain and endurance, um, I made a short list of some of the things we can learn from suffering, or some of the things I've learned. It can bring us to repentance. I I often know that if I'm hurting, I'm talking to God, whether that's emotionally or physically or financially, having pain, suffering, deprivation. I'm talking to God. I'm like, do you see what's happening down here? Or do you see how I've messed up? I need to be back in right relationship or fellowship with you. We already mentioned humility, how pain and suffering, deprivation, it makes us humble. We realize we're not in control. We can't control everything, no matter how clever we are, or how much we plan ahead or sacrifice it. We are a needy people. And it shows us that need, pain and suffering. It shows us our need and our utter dependence upon God. So different from the atheist perspective, right? Um, Pain and suffering for them, it seems more like an inconvenience or part of being the physical material world. But for me, pain and suffering just shows me we are in a broken and fallen place. And it's that hope of redemption, of not only our spiritual selves, but even a new body, right? A new creation. I think suffering is one of the most profound formations of empathy for others in my life. Um, because when you have gone through great hardship or pain or trials or loss, it does something to you. And I liken it to the metaphor. It's like pain, suffering, and grief. It's like burrows and carves out these like chasms in our very souls. And we can fill that with anger, resentment, bitterness, or we can let God's own love, life, vitality fill those empty places. And I just think it's incredibly beautiful. And you see it, it's well, that's part of why I put this tree picture up here for you. Look at this tree. This tree has suffered profoundly. This is a coastal redwood tree up by where I live in the forest of God. And it has burned clean through to the top, but this tree is still alive and thriving. And I didn't make this first part of the quote, the wounds are where the light enters in. But when I first heard that, that resonated with me profoundly. But it's not only where God's light comes into us through our own brokenness and our own need, but it is our very wounds that allow others to see the divine light that is now within us. And it's so odd. Like, look at this tree. Look at all the light that is being let in through its wounds. And the whole forest can see it, right? The odd thing is, as humans, though, we spend so much of our life trying to cover up or mask or hide our wounds and our deficiencies from others. And this allows us to be truly authentic and free. I mean, speak of transparency, that tree is about as transparent as you can get. Its whole insides have been hollowed out. And to me, it's a beautiful living illustration of what the Christian life is supposed to look like, where God removes us from ourselves, but fills us with his own presence, so that we actually become Theotokos, which is a fancy word for God bearers. It's not our own light like the atheist was talking about. He has a very small light. I'm not saying he's not a good person by human standards, but it's like a Coleman lantern in the desert at night, right? It seems bright. You can see it from miles away. But when the full light of the noonday sun comes out, that lantern could be on and you wouldn't even know it because it pales in comparison to the light of the sun. And that's how I see God's goodness compared to human goodness. It's it's so beyond our understanding of what light and goodness means that all human goodness is as darkness from God's perspective outside of Christ. And so, what else do I got? Pain and suffering can cause us to be introspective. It can force us to make adjustments in lifestyle, in diet, in relationships, in jobs, and all sorts of things. It can promote change and growth. It brings us wisdom. We actually, in some ways, share in the very life of Christ. Remember, Jesus was described as a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. This wasn't just a joyride for him down on earth, sharing all the love and hippie gospel. This man suffered profoundly. And I think about this often, what it must have been like for the Creator to walk amongst his own creation, and how fascinating that must have been for him. Like, could you imagine walking down the road or through the forest or through a city and you're like, I made that, I made you, I made him, I made her, I made that tree, I made that squirrel. But then to have your very creation reject you to the point of wanting to kill you, speak of pain and sorrow. I can't even imagine that level of a turn. Pain makes us present. Have you noticed that? When you're in pain, you are here now. You're not over there or back there, or you are present. Pain has a very centering effect upon us. Proverbs tells us fools enjoy feasting and laughter, but wisdom is in the house of the morning, and wise are they that go therein. For that is the fate of all of us, barring the Lord tarrying, is we will all go through that ourselves or with our friends and family. And then I'm going to leave you with Jesus saying, um, take no thought of the morrow, for the morrow will take thought of itself. Sufficient to the day is the evil thereof. And there's an old timey saying that kind of encapsulate that. It's like, don't borrow trouble. Be present, deal with now, deal with today. Don't be fretting and worrying about all these potential things that could come your way and may never materialize. We should learn from the past, but we should not feel regret or angst or anxiety from it. We should plan for the future, but that is not where we live. We can only live here now in the present. And so I hope this was encouraging to you. And I don't think I answered the problem of pain in the world or problem of evil, but I hope it gave you some good ways to think about it, and that hopefully in the right context you can use to help and encourage others and maybe even yourself.